Hi and welcome to a new episode of Beyond an Ordinary Life, where I and my guests are trying to reduce the barriers of moving abroad by sharing more of our experiences, as well as giving tips and advice on how you can tackle your life abroad as well. Today, I'm super happy and excited to have two experts on board, Jane and Julie, who work for the International Community in Odense, which is part of the Odense Kommune. And I've known Julie and Jane for quite some time already, and I'm very excited about the work that they're doing. So thank you so much for taking the time of being here. We will be talking about all the kinds of things of what do they actually work with, what do they do, what kind of services do they offer, what kind of events do they offer, and spoiler alert, I've been to several of them and really liked them. And then also in general, like what do people from abroad struggle when they come to Denmark, and what are the tips of Jane and Julie on how to overcome them? So thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited for the conversation. And it's the first time I'm having a conversation with three people. So very great new things to tackle here today. So thank you so much for being here. And let's start off with a short introduction. Please, Jane and Julie, maybe Jane, you start, and please introduce yourself a bit in terms of what do you work with? Who are you?
So I'm Jane. I'm the Partner Career Advisor at International Community. I've been in this role for a couple of years. I've been working in the municipality for 5+ years. So I've been working with employment for several years, actually. And I'm very passionate about working with internationals. As you can see from my color, I have a background with parents coming from Africa. So in that sense, I think I've always been around different cultures. So yeah, so it's part of my DNA, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, my name is Julie. I've been working for International Community Odense from the very beginning, 9 years ago. I got this job when I moved to Odense from Aarhus, where I studied. And the task was basically to establish an international community in Odense, which was super interesting. It was a super interesting task and something I've been very enthusiastic about.
Awesome. Well, now that we got a bit of an understanding of what you're doing, let's start off, because I really like what Jane said also about the DNA, and you kind of knowing where internationals are coming from and trying to, support them on their journey. So let's maybe start off with the conversations in terms of what do you think an international struggle most with when they come to Denmark? And then we can cover, what you do to support them with these kind of different struggles. So what do you see like in your everyday life? What are the biggest challenges that people like us face?
I think there might be many things, and Julie can obviously add to that. But I think that one of the most important things is the language barrier. Coming here as an international understanding that even though English is a global language in Denmark, people speak Danish, of course, and if you want to stay here long term, you probably have to learn some basic Danish or more than that. So I think language is a big barrier. And then there are also things like, easing yourself into society. We are like an egalitarian society, so it's a very flat hierarchy. I think coming from a country where it's quite different than that, you might come with a different mindset, and it will take you some time to adjust to the way of doing it in Denmark. So those, I think, are some of the biggest struggles. What do you think, Julie?
Well, I definitely agree. When moving to another country, you go through different phases. And in the beginning, what we see is that all the practical things bothers people a lot, obviously, or it makes them worried. First of all, like, where am I going to live? Of course, that's a huge concern. If people move here with a family, they have even more concerns. Where are my children going to go to school? And the whole process of registering or registering yourself. So all the practical things. First of all, right when the internationals move here, but then in the long run, when all these things are set, it's definitely more the cultural aspects. And it's very dependent on what you do here. If you have a job, you might be super excited about this new job and all the things you get to do. But then in the spare time, you're like, okay, now I'm here, I'm all alone, I don't have any network, and all my Danish colleagues are gone. They left the office at 4. So what am I going to do? The thing is that some statistics shows that we have the best work-life balance in the world, at least in some statistics, and that's something that make people move here. Of course, it's a very attractive thing. So people are very excited about it, but then when you actually move here and you realize, okay, I actually have more spare time that I used to, but I have no one to spend it with, then it's really a challenge to some. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's also very individual depending on, are you coming by yourself? Are you coming with family? But for example, even yesterday I had a conversation with someone in Sweden, which is of course not Odense, but very similar situation where it's still hard also to find your social circle. Especially when you're with your family, because you also are kind of interested in people that might also have a family, etc., right? With a similar background where you don't have the language barrier. But from my experience, what you both said really spoke to me, both also from the language barrier part, as well as the what happens when, you're done with work, everyone left. And also the you kind of feel like friends at work, but it never or it rarely gets to the point where you actually meet people outside of work as well. In my line of work, I was quite lucky because of the fact that we had an entire group of internationals who were all in the same situation. And then we hang out a lot together, and some Danish people were included as well. But I think if it's an entirely Danish company, especially because people in Nordic countries tend to make their friends when they're in high school or in university, and then they usually don't let new people into their circles, is something that is something I had to learn within the past years, and it took me a long time to learn, is that it's nothing against me personally. It's more like they don't invite new people into their circles, or it takes them a lot to do that. So in my example, the best ways to counteract that was basically to go to different clubs or to events like yours, where you find like-minded people who have the same issues. And sometimes you even find Danes there. So for example, at bachata classes or Toastmasters, etc., I was able to find people. And what I really liked, to draw the conclusion to one of your events, is that you also make events like the International Welcome Day, where you show what kind of clubs are here in Odense and where can you connect with like-minded people, because of the fact that it's so hard to get into these friendship circles when people already have established those, after high school and university time. So really, really, really great points. I actually have a question to you both regarding the language barrier, because sometimes, or something I experience as well as my friends experience, and we talk about it a lot, is we are all at a place where we're kind of okay at Danish, but not perfect. And there's either you speak completely in English, or you switch right away to Danish, even though you're not like right there yet, especially in a professional context. And when we, for example, attend events, like English-speaking events, and people still keep talking in Danish, like constantly, even though everyone else, like some people speak Danish if it's like a group conversation, some people speak English, and then there's sometimes one or two people who just stick with Danish all the way. And I know that Danish people are very conscious about their English, which I don't understand because you guys are super fluent. But, we all have our insecurities, so I kind of understand it. But what do you think the reasons are? And secondly, how can I, as an international, if I'm not fully able to speak Danish, like work with that? Like, right, how can I have the conversation still? Like, what would you recommend from your experience?
That's a tricky question. I think the same could be said if I were to go to Germany or any other country where I see, a lot of internationals, but obviously some Germans sitting side by side. I think they would have a tendency just to switch to German. So
Exactly.
I sometimes also say that maybe it's a good idea going to an event if you really want to speak English or whatever, then you have to sit beside somebody who doesn't speak your first language. So that will force you to speak English, of course. So that's usually what I say to the internationals.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it depends a lot on the individual situation and the group of people and the whole setup. But generally, uh, there's there's a tendency that Danes aren't very good at offering their help, but they're actually very willing to help in case you ask for help. And it also goes like for Danes and Danes among each other. For instance, if you move to a new neighborhood, you shouldn't expect people to knock your door and say welcome and offer their help. But if you go ask your neighbor, hey, can you help me do this and that? I really don't know what to do. I just moved here. Then they're very likely to actually be very enthusiastic about helping you. But sometimes you really have to ask, though it can be like challenging to cross that barrier. But in this case, if you then approach them and say, "Hi, I'm really eager to practice my Danish. Do you mind if I join the conversation in Danish and then maybe sometimes answer in English? Or do you mind switching to English because I'd love to hear what you discuss, but I can't follow you when you speak Danish?" Something like that might help.
Yeah, those are really good tips. And I also just want to emphasize again that I don't think it has anything to do with people trying
No.
to be rude or anything. It's just, first of all, not the awareness. And second of all, I think insecurity themselves, especially when it comes to language barriers. So, and I would totally agree, it would be exactly the same in Germany. I'm not gonna say that would be different for sure, especially because Germans are not as good as in English than Danish people are. I think we rank place 10 and Denmark is on place 5 or something like that in terms of
wow.
English proficiency worldwide. Yeah. So you guys are quite, up high there on the list. So
Yeah. But that's
yeah.
exactly what makes it a challenge to learn Danish. At least that's what lots of people tell us. Because the Danes, they just change the language to English right away. So the internationals, so they don't really have a chance of actually practicing everyday Danish. So it's a good thing that the level is quite high, but it's definitely also a challenge if you're actually interested in learning the language.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
it's true. I think we've also had interns telling us that they want to learn Danish better, and they really have to, stress that we want to learn Danish better. So please speak Danish to us, because I think we're doing them a disservice by just communicating in English when they actually want to learn Danish better.
And that's something very interesting that you just said there, and which is probably the key to all of this, is basically communication. Also saying like, hey, I'm at a place where I can have a chit chat with you, but or like a frokost chat or whatever, but I cannot like have my work conversation with you in Danish, but communicating that, right? So to make clear to the Dane, like, when is switching fine and when is it not? Or like in your context with an intern, like, hey, please like keep speaking Danish to me because I actually am eager to learn, right? Because of course, both of you are very culturally aware and you want to like integrate people and make them part of your team as well. So you're very aware of these things working with internationals. So I'm sure you just like initially right away want to include them. But maybe that's not what they actually need. And I think that's probably the key to everything also in terms of the question I raised in the beginning with how do you go about these things, is just to be like, hey, can you please switch to English, because otherwise I'm not gonna be able to understand, and I'm eager to learn from you. I'm eager to like hear more about what you're able to say. And something to add there that I found very beneficial to do as well is kind of also to remind Danish people about how good they are in English, because I feel like people always think they're so bad at English because there's this thing about, Danish English accent or Denglish and using a lot of like Danish English words, etc. But in the end, as I just said, you're ranked 5th place, you're quite, up high. So comparing that to any other accent, like everyone's able to understand you, right? And you have such a good level of English, and I find that reminding them of that really helps sometimes as well to like break the ice and make them like continue talking. So that's something I try to use a compliment, and then they open up a bit more. But very, very interesting stories that you shared there. Is there anything else that comes to mind with regards to what you think that people or internationals are faced with when they first move to Denmark?
I was just actually thinking about it in terms of the workplace situation. Also, one of the things that can be different from Denmark compared to other countries is the fact that we actually, I would say, install a lot of responsibility in the individual employee. So it's sort of ingrained in us. I think also just with raising your children, already in the age of, daycare age, a lot of responsibility is put on the individual child. So in that sense, once you reach the workforce, I see something, because that's very close to what I'm doing. I guide the accompanying partners on job search in Denmark and how you apply for jobs and how you find a job in Denmark. But one of the things I also counsel them on is this fact of it's quite different than other countries, where if a manager, for instance, here gives you a task, they expect you to complete the task. So you are independent in your work a lot than maybe other countries where you are guided throughout. And like Julie also said before, if you don't understand it, or we expect you to come and say that, as opposed to us asking you. So that's sometimes a tricky thing to learn once you come here.
And how do you advise people in terms of course, you could basically just say, just tell them. But of course, it's very hard sometimes to get out of our own skin, right? Based on our own cultural backgrounds, what we're used to being the normal way of doing things. So is there any kind of tip on how to go about it?
I would say I usually tell the internationals to ask, once you land a job, ask for more meetings, onboarding meetings, because it's always a good idea to know the expectations and know, am I meeting the expectations, or are you satisfied with me? Am I satisfied with your work? So I usually tend to say that to the internationals, but if I know the company, I will also tell the company, please maybe make room for some more meetings, because they might, in the beginning, due to, the cultural differences, not know many of the things or the way we are in Denmark in terms of company policies, or just, working in the Danish labor market. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And I think, again, communication is key there. And I really like the fact that you also inform basically the managers or the companies themselves, like, hey, please be aware of these things, because this is also going to be like a gap that they might have themselves culturally, right? Because for them, if they, for example, only had Danish employees and all of a sudden there's someone coming with a different cultural background, they might not be aware that they need to be a bit more like communicative and transparent in terms of what their expectations are. So one thing that comes to mind from our own experience, for example, was when I had a manager shift. Before it was never really talked about, but I had a manager shift, and then all of a sudden he was very aware that I was working quite a bit of overtime. And at some point he came to me, and to me it was totally normal, because in Germany I learned if you work overtime, you go the extra mile, you're trying to grow, you're trying to show what you can do, and that's how you are able to grow within the company. Whilst in Denmark, he explained me, and I was not aware, and it was, I think, 3 years in, or 4, no, 3 years in after my experience here in Denmark. And he told me, and I knew about work-life balance and stuff like that, but I didn't know that if I worked overtime, it would mean to him that I'm not able to conduct my work in the work hours that I'm given, and that I'm basically either have too much on my plate or that I'm too slow. So, and both are not good signs. So it's not a sign of I'm going the extra mile. It's more like, not positive. And that blew my mind. I was like, wait, what? I didn't know. Thanks for explaining that to me. Because to me, in my head, it was, you're going the extra mile, you're putting the extra work, you want to develop here. Whilst to a Dane, it means the complete opposite. And those are things that even with time, sometimes it takes a long time to understand. That's where communication comes in, right? And making those things clearer, and maybe someone who recognizes this kind of behavior telling them like, hey, this is not good. I once had an intern as well, also with a different cultural background. And we also had similar conversations, because in her cultural background, it was very normal to always, even if it was not necessary, to just say something for the sake of showing that you know stuff. So even if it was completely not the right time and moment, she would just tell something just for the sake of telling it. And I'm like, this is irrelevant right now, So at some point I recognized the behavior, and I told her, hey, we need to sit down together. And I tried to explain the Danish way of things here, that we are that it's not so much about individual accomplishments, but more about group. Hey, we're a group, we're a team, we're accomplishing this together. We all know that you know stuff, otherwise you wouldn't be here. You don't need to constantly prove yourself, in every conversation, dropping specific words, etc., just for the sake of showing off. You don't need to do that in Denmark. And that she thanked me so much for having that conversation with her, because she was like, this blew my mind. I had no idea. Where I come from, this is very, very different. And if you don't say anything, it's considered that you don't know anything and you're not supposed to be here. So she came with a very different background, and communicating that is so important.
Exactly. It's a valid point. It's also something I specify, once I guide these accompanying partners, because I see with many of them, they come from societies where it's very important to show that that you're good, or that you have specific skills. So sometimes they will also include their exam papers or whatever. I said, to a Danish employer, doesn't matter. The experience matters. You don't have to write that you were, what do you call it? Sorry, that word slipped. But show that you were an elite student or whatever. It doesn't matter to a Danish employer unless it's a large company that's based on results. So to the average Danish employer, it's more about your values. It's more about what you can bring to the table in terms of also what you said, the team spirit, solving tasks as a team. So, yes.
Exactly. And here, I think it's a good point to jump into your line of work, as you just said, that you're working to support accompanying partners, whether that's a woman or a man. It could be both. As you rightly said yesterday, thank you for telling me. So who is that kind of service for, and what does it include? Can you share a bit more, who are you supporting?
Yes. So in the individual services, I support accompanying partners to expats. So that's people who move here because of their partner's work. So once an expat or an international is recruited from abroad. If they come with a family, if they come with a partner, I have the ability to give them individual guidance. But I also do these job search seminars where I take in not only the accompanying partners of the expats, but also accompanying partners to Danes or to students or even expats themselves or students, So if there's room for them, then I'm on board with that. Yes, but the people within the target group have a priority, but other than that, there's almost always room for somebody else. So yes.
And let's say I'm an expat with a partner and I'm coming to Denmark. Are they right away hooked up with you, with the company, or do they need to find you first? Like how do they get aware of this services?
Yes. So if the company knows about us and knows about the services we provide, they can easily tell the people they recruit about our services. They often do. Just tell them there's an international community in Odense and they have these services that could be beneficial for you and your family. And they send them a link to the website, our website, or yes. Yes, so that's usually how they get in contact. Some just Google International Community and our website pops up and they go to the website and read about us. Some might get a referral from others, from people in their network. So yeah, so there are different ways of finding us. But yes, I would say we try to have as many companies be aware of the services we provide, the local companies here in Odense to be aware of the services we provide for them, so they can easily just make that connection between us and the internationals.
Nice. And what does it include? So you already talked about, supporting with job search, doing these kind of job webinars that are also actually for everyone, not just the accompanying partners. But what else is included? You also talked about house search before, but what else do you support people with in this kind of service?
Yeah, we have what we call newcomer service, which is like individual guidance on all the practical matters you need to pay attention to and go through whenever you move to Denmark. So a part of that is help finding your first home in Denmark, because actually, in order to register and get a civil registration number, you need an address in Denmark. So even though you're still abroad, you need to start your house hunt. So you have a place to move into, and so you're able to register when you get here. And our experience is that it can be very challenging because in many cases, when apartments are being rented out here in Denmark, in order to get one apartment, you need to go for a viewing. You need to go and see it on a specific date and time. And if you're still in the States, that's not possible. And then there are lots of other things when finding a place to live. For instance, it's very common that the landlords ask for a deposit. It can be up to 3 months rent and plus prepaid rent. So it's a huge amount of money. And for internationals, it's very hard to figure out, is it supposed to be like that? Am I supposed to transfer this very big amount of money? When will I ever get them back? And how does the whole system work? So we have a colleague who's in charge of this newcomer service, and she explains the international employees and their accompanying families, okay, how are we going to do this? What's the right process? What's the right order of things? How do we get a tax card? How do we register our vehicle? If we bring a vehicle, what about our driver's license? Are we allowed to drive here in Denmark? What about kindergarten for the kids? And so on and so on. The list can be very long.
Banking as well, how to get a bank in Denmark. We are a very digitalized country, so all salary goes into a bank account. I don't think you can be paid your salary actually unless you have a bank account. So she's also guiding them on those matters as well.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself actually when I first moved here, because I got a job with University of Roberts quite quickly, like the student job. And they were like basically hunting me down, being like, Christina, do you have a bank account now? Like, we need a bank account. We need a bank account. And it was really hard back in the days actually to get a bank account, because with me being a student, there were always like so many students starting at the same time. So the banks were completely like, had so much work to do that they said it will take at least 3 or 4 months until we can get it set up for you. So I went from bank to bank, just asking, I really need a bank account. I'm starting to make money now, but that was actually a problem back then, of course. But that was also like a time where a lot of people move. So if you're an expat and you come, that might not be during that time. So of course, it's a very individual problem. But I can definitely relate, and you do need a bank account in that situation. But I also really like what you said, Julie, regarding, because especially when you move abroad, that's also something that people are concerned of, is that they're being scammed, especially when it comes to housing. So I really like the fact that you also like basically tell them like, no, this is like how we do things here. And yeah, exactly. And also with regards even to when you move out again, right? Because I'm very used to from Germany that you get 100% of your deposit back. Like that's the way we do things. Unless you really like, I don't know, screwed up the apartment. But like, unless you really did some bad stuff, you usually get all the money back, which is not the case in Denmark, right? So for me, that was actually also a bit of a culture shock that they want to completely renovate the entire apartment when you move out, and you have to pay it from your deposit. That still like hurts me a bit, but that's just the way things are being done here, right? And if you're not aware of that, you very quickly think that you're being scammed, of course. For sure.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if I can just add, people also have like concerns about things we can't really change, but our experience is that it helps a lot to talk about these things in advance. For example, the weather. People are super concerned about the weather, and it can be challenging, especially if you move here during the winter. Like if you arrive in November, it's gonna be a very long and dark winter. So it's we can't change that, but it's good to be prepared. It's good to discuss, okay, what kind of coping strategies can you put in place? What does the Danes do? What can you do? Go out, try to socialize, get some daylight in the weekends, and so on. Another thing is the tax system. People are very concerned about paying such a high tax rate. And then it's our job to explain, yes, the tax rate is high, but we also have a welfare system. We have free healthcare, free schooling, and so on. That's how the society is put together.
Exactly. And there also maybe to show also how Danish people reacted, because that was something that was actually quite mind-blowing to me, at least in my experience, that Danes are actually quite happy about paying their taxes, that they actually like it. So they're actually like,
It's what we know.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. So, yeah.
And that also opened my eyes in terms of, being grateful for your standard of life here in Denmark. And in order to have that, you need to pay taxes, right? So there's like this kind of, okay, it's fine. It's just how we do things here, And that also eased my mind a bit in terms of how I think about it. So also like learning from the Danes how to deal with that, I think was very helpful for me personally, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
True. And maybe we should say something about our event service. Also, the fact if you're coming in the dark months, not necessarily, but then we do have some events. Julie can add more to that.
Yeah, we host more than 50 events annually for internationals in Odense. And the idea is that whenever you move to Odense, you can check our event calendar and you'll find something you can attend. You will find an event you can go and join, and you'll be able to meet other people who also moved here and who are in the same situation. And you can get a network right away, you can socialize, and you can learn from their experiences. Then we have different focuses. Some of the events are very much about explaining the Danish society. How does it work? Why do we do the way we do? We do workshops on culture shock and Danish workplace culture, for instance. We have an event coming up about health understandings. How do we understand the concept of health and treatment, and how is that related to our cultural backgrounds? Many internationals, they experience that when they go to see the doctor in Denmark, they feel undertreated, or they feel that whatever they bring, it isn't really acknowledged. And it might not be the case, but the case is that there are different health understandings in different countries, and that's what we want to point out with this seminar, to simply educate people and help them navigate the Danish welfare and health system, because the system is free, but of course there are limitations and things you need to know. Then we do lots of social events. We have like networking events where people can go and network professionally. We have family events. We have events for the accompanying partners during daytime. So in case you're here because your partner got a job, then we organize events during daytime where the so-called accompanying spouses can go and meet and socialize.
Wow, yeah. As I said, like I'm a huge fan of your events. So if you haven't known of them, please check them out. And I actually really would like to jump in your comment regarding the healthcare system. I really love that you do that, because actually that's been one of the things that I struggled most with, I think, besides the making friends with Danes. I mean, that's a common issue, but understanding the healthcare system and understanding that I'm not being undertreated, but that it's just a different way of how they see things. So it's more reactive here than proactive, the system in general. Whilst in Germany, I'm more used to a proactive system. So I always felt like they're not taking good care of me here. And also when it comes to like being sent to a specialist and stuff like that, that really, really rarely happens. And you must have like a really, really clear case for that to be happening. And I know, of course, a lot of my international friends who feel exactly the same way. So there's like already this kind of jokes, Panadil fixes everything kind of thing. But it's just a different, way of how they look at health and how they perceive it. And maybe that is also important to make your doctor also aware of that, that you maybe feel like, you're used to a different system. Can you please explain why you're being treated, like why you're treating me in this way right now here? And I love that you do that kind of workshop. I think I should attend. When is that happening?
It's in 11.
Yes. Okay, that really sounds like something I could use some learning on. I love that you do that, because it's something that is very intransparent to all of us, and that I know that also some internationals tend to still see their doctors at home because they feel like they're not being fully covered here in that sense. So I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that for sure. What else is coming up? I saw, for example, there's some kind of LinkedIn event. What is that about?
Yes, that's a networking event. We are hosting together with Martin Kökert. He's a networking specialist from Copenhagen, and he's organizing meetups for internationals in different cities in Denmark, and now also in Odense. So it's a place where you can go and network with other internationals, and then the idea is that you link up on LinkedIn while you are there, and then you use the network afterwards. But it's quite informal and very, very nice. We host it in a bar, so you can also have a beer.
Yes.
Yes.
And then I'm doing the job search seminars again, also starting April 4th. So so there's going to be around that. Yes, I think those are the main events we have?
Yes, we have some family events as well. We have a huge Easter egg hunt for families. It's already fully booked. We have more than 100 people signing up. So it's going to be a lot of kids running around hunting for Easter egg in a garden. It's going to be very nice. And then coming up later on, we have an event with Helen Russell, who's an author. And she's recently written a book about raising children in Denmark, how we do that. Also, generally in the north, we have a different approach to raising children, and she's gonna do a talk about that.
Oh, sounds like a lot of exciting stuff happening. So I know with those kind of events, you can find them on Facebook mainly, right? And there's also a link from your website to the different social channels. But what about, for example, the job search, Jane, that you talked about in April? I think you said. Where can people sign up for that?
Yes, that's announced in our newsletter, but it's also announced on the website. If you go to the website and you click on accompanying partners, there's in the left-hand bar, there is something called job search seminar. If you click on that, then you can just click on the sign up.
Awesome. Well, that sounds very, very exciting. I also like that you kind of like combine your different events, right? Because Julie just talked about networking on LinkedIn, and we all know our network is our net worth, especially when it comes to Denmark and finding a job in Denmark. So kind of that topic also connects with your topic in terms of how to actually find a job, right? So I like how I can see a lot of linkages between your work and how you kind of both support us internationals in a broader sense, of course, for the social life, but also from the work life perspective. That's really awesome. I want to take, of course, the opportunity because there were some community questions from my Instagram community. And basically all of them were around events. So I'm just going to pick two of them. So Marlies asked, are the events accessible to people who just live outside of Odense? Or is it also okay to live near or near a bigger city?
So the events are basically open to everyone. If we have limited spots, we prioritize the internationals who are here in Odense and work for the local companies. But many of them are open, and you can just find them on our Facebook page and sign up, no matter where you live.
Awesome. That's great. And also from what I understood, no matter what your background is, whether you're an expat, an international student, an accompanying partner, or what else could there be? I think those are kind of the options that we see here in Odense. Okay, perfect. Question 2 would be, and I think you actually already answered that. Irina asks, what are cool upcoming events in Odense for internationals? And I think you basically covered those, right? Unless you want to add something to that.
Yes. I just want to add that besides us, there are lots of other people organizing cool events for internationals in Odense. There's a group organizing hiking trips every Saturday. They go for hikes at different places on Funen. There's a group organizing meetups in bars every Friday. There's a board game group. We have an international book club. There are lots of things going on, and you also know some of them very well. You're part of the Toastmasters Club, the Salsa Club, and so on. There's so many things to attend.
Yes. I would say the best thing is maybe to sign up to our newsletter, which you can also do through a link on the website, because then you will get information about the events, the upcoming events that we are hosting and doing, but also events that other organizations are doing in Odense.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I mean, that's a really, really good tip to remember, and where to actually also find these kind of organizations. As I said, like I really recommended your International Welcome Day. I don't know, you probably do that once a year, right? Okay. In September.
Yes, September.
Yeah. But I can really recommend, and I think you probably also still have the website online, because there you could also see who was attending, etc. And that helped me a lot to like also guide through, what else exists here in Odense? I didn't even know about that. So I really like that, because that also shows, because I see that with my own behavior and also with the people I interview, is that we have interests that we had at home but then we move abroad and then we don't follow through those interests. So we don't continue with the soccer club or with basketball or with a book reading club or whatever that would be, right? Or for me, public speaking and bachata and salsa dancing. So it really helps to feel more at home when you do the things that you're also used to doing at home, like things that make you happy, that excite you, etc. So I really love that you also connect not only what do you do, but what else is also accessible here in Odense, right? So
Exactly. And I also think, just to add to that, Christina, it goes back to this, you said something before about Danes not being the most open people, to make friends with. And we urge internationals to join clubs, to join, to sign up to an organization, because it can be a fast-paced way of making friends, So really taking the interest you have from your home country and just trying to find the places in Odense where you can continue those activities.
100% agree, and I think I'm the best testament to that, because I actually found really great Danish friends through Toastmasters and through salsa bachata dancing, and that was actually also kind of mind-blowing to me, like how much easier it was to connect, because we had like a common interest, or were kind of like-minded in terms of what we want from life, what our mindsets are, etc. And that's how it's much easier to connect than just, for example, meeting someone at a bar or something like that. Really, really great tip. And I really loved our conversation. I think this is the perfect time to wrap up, unless you want to mention anything else in the end. We talked about, sign up for the different events, sign up for the newsletter. I'm following your newsletter as well. I'm checking it out all the time.
Yes.
To keep being informed. And I think, thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll see you soon and on your events as well. So
thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks a lot.